Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. This week, I have the pleasure of welcoming back Jill Benedict to the show. Jill has become our resident vacation planner expert. And today in our conversation, we're going to explore the various options available for families, whether it includes cruising, an all-inclusive resort, or a resort like a Disney or a Universal, and how to choose the best vacation type based on your family's needs and preferences, and probably the biggest thing, wants and desires. Please enjoy my conversation with Jill Benedict. Jill Benedict, welcome back to the Emotional Balance Sheet podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. It means I did okay on my first try, so we're back.
You did. You got a lot of positive feedback from the audience. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna have you back yet this year. So we're recording this in mid-November. I'm not quite sure when the show will release, but I figured now was as good a time as any to get you back on, as people were contemplating what to do over the holidays. Obviously, up here in Michigan, you know, our midwinter break is only 2.5, 3 months away.
Yes.
So it's a crazy time. And I know we haven't talked since our last Disney cruise, which was during Hurricane Milton, which was exciting.
Jeez.
I know you were out at Hawaii and on Ilhalani.
The Disney Resort Olani. And so I'm there and crying every day because my dogs are back home with our 4 dogs. That poor girl, she's just graduated from college and she does dog sitting for us when we travel. And I'm like, oh my God, she had to like hurricane proof her house and spend the night. And once it passed, it was a better vacation, but wasn't one of my favorites at the beginning.
Yeah, I know that you had mentioned that in the email that you sent. I don't know if I told you this, but that's actually where Teresa and I got married.
Wow.
Yeah. And we haven't been back. And like, that's not like on her like big bucket list to get back there. She wants to take all the kids with us. So I'm like, I don't know about that. That's a really expensive price tag. So don't be surprised if she ever reaches out to you about that one.
It is my favorite place in the world. So I can't falter if she does.
So where I wanted to start today was this question that kind of came up from a few listeners was that, well, how do I decide what type of vacation I really want to go on, and like what's the best type of vacation for my family? And so specifically we're talking about, do I go on a cruise? Do I go to a destination place? If I go to a destination place, do I look for something that's all inclusive? Do I go to like a resort, like a Disney or Universal? You know, what's that like? You know, I didn't really, the two questions that came in didn't really ask about European travel. And I think we should probably like set that aside and do an entire episode on European travel.
Yes, that's a whole because one thing with European travel, just on the quick touch point, is their hotel rooms are a lot smaller than the United States hotel rooms. So typically, like there are 2 to 3 max capacity per single room. So when you're traveling, even with a family of four, sometimes it's forcing you often into 2 rooms. So that's a whole nother. We'll tackle that. I'm a pretty big expert in it. So
Well, great. So we'll put that on the future conversation list. So backing up, like when you start working with the families that you work with, like how do you go about guiding them to figure out what's the best vacation for them? And then we can maybe get into some of the specifics of each
this
type.
is kind of a joke, but I always get the guests that they message me. I want to go somewhere warm. I want to go when it's the best deals, and it's a very I get a very vague kind of. I know I want to go away, but I don't know when or where to go or where what to do. So that's where I kind of come in and I'll ask them a lot of different questions to kind of get pull more feedback into what their expectations are. So if you're a family that you want to just relax, lay out, kind of wing things, then a vacation like Disney World does require a lot of planning and it's a lot of on the go. I mean, it's not a vacation where sometimes they always say there's no tired like Disney tired. So, it's definitely
That's
not
true.
one for the people that are looking to just kind of, zone out, sleep in every day. So that might be more of the tropical destinations, your cruises and your all inclusives. So it's kind of gathering, that. And then also, the children's ages play into it too. You've got some guests who they don't want to go to Disney World until their children reach a certain age because they have the whole, they won't remember it. But my whole thing is, I don't remember what I ate for dinner last week. So it's more so living in the moment. And also, kids are free until they're 3. So that will kind of bring, the theme park, you know, portion into it. But really, it's just, and then with all inclusives versus cruises, that's another big kind of thing that we have to juggle when I'm trying to help a guest because all inclusives are nice. There are different levels of resorts though. So if you're expecting a, extravagant property, top of the line food, top shelf liquor, that's going to put you in a higher price point. And then you're also looking at international flights, which even with children can be a challenge if you've got layovers, just long flights that you have to sit through in general. And so that's going to really bring your price point up. Otherwise, you might go, and if you're at a lower budget, then you get to a resort and it's not great food. The food is kind of besides the resort quality, the food is really like a deciding factor in these two. Like, I love Sandals and Beaches resorts. I was just at Sandals Antigua last week. But one thing about Sandals is Sandals and Beaches line, they pride on bringing USDA choice meat into their property. So, like the steaks that you eat, it's finer cuts meat. I mean, you can go to these international countries and some of these, they're not under our US food regulations. So I don't like to call it mystery meat, but I have seen some suspect places that, these lower price point ones. So I'm even cautious. And if it's a guest with, not so big of a budget to go to, a more higher end resort, then cruises are often the way to go because you're getting a domestic flight. Typically you're going out of, Fort Lauderdale or Miami, or even there's cruise ports scattered throughout the country. Galveston, Texas, there's Cape Liberty, New Jersey, Los Angeles. So they're all over the place. And then you're getting all the food on the ship, kind of like an all-inclusive type where even, if you don't, if you go to a private island, food's included there, or you eat on the ship if don't want to eat on your island stops. And then it's that you still get to go and have your beach relaxation trip. And it's a lot more peace of mind. Even like at night at the kids' clubs, a lot of people will feel more comfortable putting their kids at a club on the ship. It's the employees right there. They're kind of confined versus you're in a foreign country and you're dropping your kids off at a kids' club while you're at this resort. And so, a lot of that comes into these discussions.
Yeah, that would make me. I didn't even think about that. I mean, obviously our kids are older now, but yeah, that's the one nice thing about like the Disney cruises that we've been on. The kids clubs have been phenomenal. The counselors that are there, it's like going to like camp. But I
Right.
know other families that I've worked with, they've gone to like, all inclusive like resorts down in Mexico. They have a kids club and then they just send their kids to the club. I'm like, that's that may make me a little nervous. I mean, they've never had any problems. They always have a great time. The kids love it. But there's something there that like would make me give that a little second thought, maybe.
Correct. Yeah. It's just, it'll come down to the resort line and the quality. I mean, you've got even like Hyatt and different resort brands. They're in the all inclusive market. So they'll have some really nice resorts that are family friendly, great kids programs. But again, you really have to vet the properties, and that's where experts like us come into. I know my brother, he leads up our all inclusive division, and I'm pretty good at it as well. Especially, like I said, I love sandals and beaches. That's a place where I'll always recommend for my guests to go. And we really assist with that and getting that peace of mind included in it too.
So when I was on, and I can't even believe I'm going to say this. So when I was on my first Disney cruise this year, I actually met one of my macro economists, Neil Dutta. I don't know if how often Neil listens to the show, but if he does, hi Neil, how you doing? Looking forward to you coming back on the show. There was the first time, and he has a family of 5. He has a set of twins plus one, and that was like their first Disney cruise. He's like, I don't know if I'd ever go on a cruise again, especially a Disney cruise. He wouldn't get into the details of it, but it got me thinking of, I think some people have this persona of what a cruise is or what a cruise isn't. Can you dive into that a little bit more, Jill? And like, if you're talking to somebody that has never been on a cruise and they're trying to decide between a cruise and something else, what would you say? Here's why you should go on a cruise, or here's why you should not go on a cruise?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the biggest difference that I find between cruises and hotels right off the bat, it's going to be the room square footage. So a lot of different cruise ships, you think, oh, I'm booking a room. You're picturing like a large room, like a Hilton or something. And then you go on, it is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it kind of comes in when guests don't always understand. Like a family of 5, sometimes I'm like, I have to get you 2 rooms that connect because I literally can't put 5 into this size room. It's not, they're like, oh, I'll just throw my kid on the couch. But really, it is kind of a shock if you don't realize, the square footage. They're not, they're doable, especially kind of if you go up from interiors to ocean views to balcony, you'll see a square footage increase. But that's also where I'm with the guests. I put the square footage of the rooms in my quotes, just so guests can kind of see that. I had a very early in my career, it was like my first year in, I'd sold a cruise, and the guest's biggest complaint was the square footage size. And they yelled, they were really upset with me, and I didn't know it was this small. So now I always just kind of back it up with square footage in there. And then, he might be a guest where he wants more of an extravagant suite, and maybe he was just booked in a traditional, balcony room. So he didn't like the space, but I'm personally fine with it. And like I said, I cruise all the time. It's one of my favorite ways to travel, if not my favorite. But so you've got kind of the room configurations. That's kind of the first part of it. The other parts, I mean, it also will come down to the cruise line. I know a lot of guests with the kids that are kind of approaching their teenage years, like Disney Cruise Line can be hit or miss, because I feel like there's cruise lines out there like Royal Caribbean, and they will have more, rock walls, outrageous water slides, like very kind of thrill seeking, ice skating, bumper cars, you name it. They've got those type of recreation on the ship. Whereas Disney, you cannot beat their kids clubs with the character activities and things that go to there. But then we've got that kind of teenage range, and I'm sure you can vouch for that too, how your kids feel. Some will love it, especially if you've grown up going to Disney World. It doesn't matter. Like, I love Disney cruises when I was in high school, but then I'll get the families where, well, they're not so much into that. They want more recreation. So that's another thing we kind of have to look at. And then another thing is like nightlife too. So Disney Cruise Line, they do have beautiful bars on board. You can go out in the evening and, get a drink at some of these gorgeous locations. Like, I love the Skyline bar where it changes to the different city every hour, on the Dream and Fantasy, I believe. And so that'll go, once you're in Chicago and it's playing Chicago music, and then you go to New York and, Rio, like all over the world, and then the cocktail menus, it's cocktail scenes, super neat. But if there's, a lot of parents are going to bed early on those ships, so you might go into those bars and maybe there's not many people here. It just kind of depends on the sailing. Whereas you go on, another cruise line and there's casino that night and late night dance clubs and nights, and it's like a different, more of like a Vegas at sea vibe. So those kind of factors will play into it too.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm most interested in on this next cruise we're going on in February on Royal Caribbean, having been on Disney twice this year, is that whole transition and nightlife. Because like, that's one thing that Teresa and I noticed, like on Disney cruises, like if you're looking for a nightlife, it's you got to really try to find it. Like, there's no like big party scene or anything like that. It's,
usually it's like 10 p.m. It's like most of it's in bed, and then like I think the bar shut down probably around midnight or
Midnight.
so. So
Yes.
yeah, it's like midnight. I think kids clubs open till like 1 a.m. if you need to have the kids there late, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Whereas, Utopia, you're going on Utopia of the Seas. That's my home tour. I've gone on that ship like 5 times already. I'm going again in December.
How have
And
you been on that 5 times already? It's brand new.
I know. I went on, back to back with the previews, and then it's an hour for me. So like I'll go on a Friday afternoon and go on the 3 night,
Okay.
back in the office by, 9 a.m. Monday. It's never miss a beat. And I go on this ship, and it's, I love to play the casino. So that's one of my fun things, but they, keep that open late, but they'll even have like, they have a toga party, for example, on board for adults in the evenings. And you can either bring a toga, or they offer toga rental. It's basically like bed sheets that they kind of converted to these togas for people to kind of live out their college dreams on the ship. You can pick up for the rental. It's free to get, at 5 p.m. the day of the party. And then they just do, all kinds of stuff to kind of keep things going in the evening. And people are out and about doing things on the ship too. So
I would have to have quite a few cocktails to get into a toga
I
outfit,
think they even have beer pong added and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting to see what we're getting into from that perspective. So,
Yeah.
from I guess a quality standpoint, like if you're going back to that client that it's still on the fence about whether they should go on a cruise or not, like how would you steer them one way or the other? Because I think the thing that I found nice about the cruise is that everything is inclusive, except, at least on Disney, except for your alcohol. And Teresa and I are trying to figure this out with Royal Caribbean, our first time on there, and these drink packages and whatnot. I feel like it's very overwhelming, and B, like I'm getting nickeled and dimed. And so
Right.
walk people through like how that works. And obviously every cruise line's a little bit different. But again, what I'm trying to get at is, how do you help a person decide, should I take a cruise or not take a cruise and do something different?
Right. So the all-inclusive guests, those are going to be the ones that, you want to wake up in one place. You want to wake up at the resort, walk outside. There's the beach, there's a pool, you can get breakfast. You're just at the same place. Then you've got the other side of that, where those guests that, okay, I've done this 2 days in a row, I'm bored, I want to go do something else. And obviously, you can get excursions at the all-inclusive. You can go on catamarans, snorkeling. You can go off the premises if you're in a safe location. Some all-inclusives, depending where it's located, they say to not leave the resort, or, don't leave unescorted without like a reputable tour company. Just, because again, you're in foreign countries doing this. So that's kind
Right.
of like that can be good or bad for somebody depending on their level of, if they worry a lot about safety and things and just don't want that stress. So then you go on your cruise ships, and you're seeing a different place every day. You're going to like all these beautiful beaches in the world that you might not have, paid to fly to otherwise for a week. You're kind of expanding your horizon, and maybe you find somewhere on that cruise you love. Like say you go to Nassau and you go to Baja Beach or Mar. It's one of my favorite hotels there for excursions. You find that place and you fall in love with it, and then you say, I wouldn't mind staying here for a week. That's exactly what I did on a recent cruise. I just loved it. Like maybe we'll come back and just fly and stay there. So you can find some places before investing all this money to go somewhere, and just kind of getting like a sneak preview of it, and just, all the action. And you kind of get the best of both worlds with the cruising, because you're going out to the beaches at night. And again, a lot of the all-inclusives, they might have little like live concerts or little things at night, or there's some bars at the resorts. But for the most part, I find at all inclusive that the daytime is like the highlight, whether you're doing an excursion or pool. And then it does kind of shut down, similar to like what you saw like on Disney Cruise Line, where at night, most people are kind of going into bed, waiting for the next day. The cruise, you can rock all night. You're going to, stage performances, Broadway style shows, ice skating shows, you name it. Like even on all the Royal Caribbean ships, you'll have it on Utopia. They have the Aqua Theater, which is like high diving and, acrobatic and dance shows, which are super cool to go to at night. So I feel like cruising is going to give you the most nightlife and kind of the peace of mind and that all-inclusive factor. And then also in regards to the drink packages and budgeting, they kind of leave that to you. I mean, you're paying for the alcohol at an all-inclusive, whether you want to,
Right.
they bake it into the price. It's not free. But on cruises, they do leave the guests that decision if they want to add an all-inclusive drink package. The average price, like on Royal Caribbean, I'm just using them as an example. It's my, top cruise brand, but it's anywhere like you can catch them like in the 60s per guest per day plus tip, and they can go up to like 90 to 100 per guest per day plus tip. And so if you kind of like factor it out with how, say a cocktail's $12, a beer's maybe 8. Like how many are you drinking in a day? If you're somebody that just wants to have a glass of wine at dinner or something, then the drink package probably isn't going to be a fit for you. There is like the classic soda package, Diet Coke drinker over here. I can get it for like $10 a day, but I want to say the pops are like $3.50 or so a piece. So if I'm drinking 2 at dinner or 2 at lunch or whatever, then I usually will get the soda package just to kind of save on that. But it's going to come down to your general consumption. Do you get the foreign coffees? Are you getting from drinks? And then if you on a cruise and you go to their privately owned islands, like, Disney Cruise Line, or they don't have the drink packages, but like for Royal Perfect Day at Coco Cay or Lavadi, your drink packages carry over on those islands versus, if you're on a cruise that has a bunch of excursions and you're not going to the cruise ship owned islands, like you're going to random beaches, you don't get to use the drink packages there. So that factors into overall, if you're, so if you're out for a full day, drinking on an excursion and not using it, you're leaving it dormant.
So as far as like cost goes, do you see that the cost of a cruise is cheaper or more expensive than a destination style vacation?
No,
I know there's a lot of factors that go into that, but
there's also obviously, there's different levels of cruise ships. Some of the older ships, if you're looking for like a crazy deal, you can kind of get the older ships that are, they're nice. They just haven't been enhanced as much. Obviously, like a way better deal on those versus like Icon of the Seas and Start of the Seas. Those are like the top cruises ships, brand new, top of the line from Royal right now, where you're going to see even a difference between ships that have been around for a few years. So you've kind of got the level of ship, and then it kind of translates over to the level of resort too that you pick. You can pick a mid-grade all-inclusive, or you can go to like a super high-end property. But as far as like the cost between the two, I mean, the airfare is the other big swing of it. I think we paid like, my brother out of Michigan, I want to say he paid around like $800 for his flights to Antigua last week versus, you could pay maybe $300 to fly to Orlando to go on a cruise. So then you're kind of, putting airfare to an all-inclusive destination versus airfare to domestic into the overall cost. I mean, for the most part, I would say cruises are going to be the lower price option like what you get, like return on investment. You're getting a lot more for paying less versus going to an all-inclusive if you want, nicer experience.
And I would imagine that return on investment, because me being the numbers guy.
Yeah. Yes.
With a bigger families, because I know there's a lot of parents that listen to this that have, families that have 3+ more kids, 4 like mine. So based on what you're saying there, for bigger families, cruising could be a much lower cost option than say a destination.
Correct. Yes. And then when you have the theme park destinations, the big thing besides like hotels, you're going to pay a premium, whether it's Disney, Universal, you'll pay a premium to stay on property at those sites, which you want to because they've given so many resort guest benefits that are
they've almost
like, if you're going
forced
to do
you
it
into staying on property.
To have the best experience, you want to with the priority dining windows and, booking your lightning lane passes or, getting express passes at Universal. But then you've got that layer of theme park tickets too, which in theory, if you go on a cruise or an all-inclusive, depending where you go, you might have to purchase excursions. Like the cruise line, Royal, back to them again. They give you example, you go to Perfect Day at Coco Cay, which is their island. You can go off on the island and not spend a dime. You can go and get free food. There's free chairs, free umbrellas, free towels. Like you don't have to spend money if you don't want to. And then there are options to upgrade if you want to add. And they do have like, the swimming with pigs excursions popular there. You can rent jet skis and stuff. So then there's, you can add that on. You can add private cabana rentals if you want guaranteed reserved seating. So there's options to do that, but then there's options where, I get a family where they're like, we're on a really tight budget, but we want to have a nice vacation. And I'm prioritizing stops that have those private islands to kind of give them those overall savings, and they can go off and really not spend much and, be content with it. It's a lot easier to kind of set a budget when food's included and you're not paying for extra excursions. You get off the ship and you literally walk. There's trams, but you can either walk or take those. You're right at the beach. So you're not going anywhere, off where the cruise dock's at.
That's actually been my favorite part of the 2 Disney cruises this year that we went on was the experience at Disney's private island. And
Yep.
ironically, I was having this conversation with the cruise director back in October on the one that we were on, and explained to him the first cruise we were on, we were only supposed to go to the private island once, but because of weather, we ended up getting to go twice. And now because of weather, this one, we ended up going twice. So we've been on 2 Disney cruises this year and been to the private island 4 times. And I would take that, every day, any day, every day. Just because,
and there's different areas there. You can mix your day up. You can go to you can change up the scenery. You can ride bikes for free.
There's a lot of different things there, and so it'll be interesting to see how is it Coco Key, the Royal Caribbean,
Perfect Day Coco Cay.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what that one's like, because I think I found that was one of the most enjoyable parts of at least the Disney cruises was their private island, just to be able to do whatever you want to do. You can sit at the beach, like you mentioned. There's other different places to go. You can ride bikes and snorkel and all that.
Perfect Day Coco Cay has the biggest freshwater pool in the Caribbean, or it's either salt or fresh. But it's the biggest big pool in the Caribbean. It's massive pool. I'm a pool girl. I will go to the beach. I'll put my feet in there. I will sometimes swim in the ocean, but I'm still paranoid. I don't know. People tell me these stories of getting bit by jellyfish and stuff, and I want to know. So like I said, if I can find a gorgeous infinity pool or, just a relaxing pool, that's where you're going to find me. And so that island delivers on that. They do have a water park there too. You'll see the big tower. You've probably seen it, all the pictures with the big water slides. Now that is an added expense. You can pay anywhere. I've seen them go as low as $50 to $75 per person for entry, or they can go upwards into $150, $175 per person. And again, if you get a cabana, you get a certain number of wristbands. I believe it's 6 wristbands to go to the water park. So some people, you'll catch a deal on the cabanas, and then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to buy wristbands anyway. Might as well get that. They run sales all the time, as I'm sure you've seen, where it's you can purchase something, and if it drops, you can cancel, rebook it. So you can always get the lower price, but it's kind of you're invested in kind of checking all the time if you want to get the best, sneak the best sale price in on these optional add-ons there.
So with what you do at your agency, is that something that you're handling for the families and clients that you work with, are looking out for these special deals, or is the onus on us to be able to figure that out and decide? Or is it both
It'll
ways?
depend. It kind of varies by brand. For example, Disney Cruise Line, their excursion prices, they're set in stone. They open at that certain window and they're not changing. And it is kind of it's important to get on at a certain time and book those. So I handle all that for my guests. We kind of communicate what those options are in advance leading up to that time. And then I go on and I book everything for you, when it opens up. So then that's set. You have up until 3 days before you cruise to cancel anything that you change your mind on, but you actually don't have to pay in advance for those. They just get kind of added to your cruise on my end. Now, with Royal Caribbean and other brands, they are going to have regular sales in your cruise planner portal. So when a guest books, I instruct them how to set that up, and they can kind of there's hundreds of these, each, you can kind of monitor them. I give guidance. I have, tip sheets that I create and everything. And then when big sales comes, I do reprice. So I think I mentioned on other, we have a best price guarantee. When a huge one came out, Black Friday, pre-sale dropped last week, for example, I went through I had hundreds of confirmation numbers. I went through every single one of my guests' reservation that was booked out from now until, last booking. And I literally repriced them against Black Friday. And I even had some families where their cruise price dropped by $1,300 since they booked. And proactively, I sent them a new confirmation. They didn't have to contact me or do anything. And I just said, hey, I saved you $1,300 on your cruise. And they were just over the moon, happy. And then there's some guests where you think that, honestly, booking early is 99% of the time, booking early is going to be your best option. For your cruise, for example, I went and repriced it, and I think it increased by over $1,000 a room since you guys deposited. So cruises
the cost increased by 1,000.
Oh yeah, instead because I was hoping to price adjust, but because it's in such demand, it's around February, March, the cruise price raised over $1,000 per room. So in theory, if you were booking now under the Black Friday sale, you might be paying $2,000 more than what you would have paid when you guys booked when you did, which is good that you were ahead of the game. And so I always tell my guests when they say, when is the best time to book? I always say is far out as you can, because I have that ability to to adjust your price up until your final payment date. And by depositing early, it's just, it's $100 down per guest if it's 5 nights or less, and then like, $250 per guest if it's 6 nights or more. But then I have the ability to drop you down anytime it decreases in value.
So does that vary by A, cruise line, and B, like destination vacations as well?
Yes. So most of the mainstream cruise lines, like Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Celebrity, Carnival, they're more of like a set deposit. Like I said, typically that $100 for shorter cruises or $250. It might vary by a few dollars on each one. Disney Cruise Line is a 20% down when you book with them. So they're more of like a luxury liner. So it's a little bit, higher deposit amount. Disney Cruise Line, I don't find, they rarely run sales. And if they do, it's just more so like niche. Like, they'll do military discounts or Canadian resident discounts or Florida resident, but very kind of niche discounts. There's definitely like when they do those, when I'll make the announcements like, oh, we're getting 2026, summer sailings. The best time to book is when they release on those. And even like a lot of the cruises for Disney Cruise Line for like spring break for 2025, like I'm having trouble finding rooms for people. A lot of them are sold out already at this point in November. So definitely like, you can always book early. And then I do have, there will be last minute deals. There'll always be an option, I will find people something if they just want to get out of the cold or, they got a nice Christmas bonus and they want to get out last minute. Obviously, everybody can't book time, super far in advance. But if you are like a budget conscious person that is really trying to stick to something for that, that's my biggest advice to you to, make sure you're getting the lowest cost.
And sticking on cost for a second, how do you advise guests on how to manage because like on a cruise, and probably same way with a destination vacation, you have these excursions. Maybe you don't get the drink package, so you're paying for drinks here and there. You have these excursions that you can go on. How do you walk people or prepare people for how much they could potentially spend on these things? So like when they get their final bill after they get off the ship or they check out of the resort, like, they're not like surprised. I just spent like $4,000 on the cruise. And I thought like it was all inclusive. And then now I'm like, oh, now I've got another $1,000 bill I got to pay.
Yes. So I have a very comprehensive quoting model when I quote them personally. So I built it. It's actually gone to a digital format. I've always had it kind of in writing in the body of the email. And it always bothered me because I was like, oh my God, this is so much. Because I'd rather give more details than not enough. And then a guest is coming to me and upset because they're like, you didn't tell me about all these costs. Or I don't ever want somebody to feel like I'm nickel and diming them. So I have a very comprehensive quote template that's per brand. And I put attachments in. I kind of showcase the additional costs. Like, for example, internet's not free on cruises on most lines. And so there's options, to buy one device, there's, daily packages. So like I outline, here's what you do for internet. If you go on certain ports, you can obviously find Wi-Fi, like maybe at the cruise terminal, like in Nassau, they have like a Wi-Fi, free connection. There's ways to get it, but when you're on the ship, you're going to likely have to pay for it. So like, I'll put that out there. So if somebody has to work all week, they know that cost could be coming in. I'll put, what exactly the terms are. There's different policies for like what you can bring on board with, some ships can let you bring 1 to 2 bottles of wine or 6-pack of beer per adults. Some it's just wine or champagne and no beer. So then like those are outlined in it. So some people are like, oh, I just want to have a glass of wine a day. I don't need to buy a drink package. I can bring a couple bottles on at the beginning of the cruise and have those for me all week. Then I'll also put in like gratuities. The big thing with gratuities is they don't necessarily want you like tipping out of pocket as you go. Like every time you sit on a meal, you don't want to have to put money on the table for the servers. So they'll do what's called prepaid gratuities. So you can either add them on in advance prior to the sailing, pay those off, and it covers, your room steward anytime you dine on the ship, other operations on the cruise line. And then if you don't pay them in advance, you're going to get them billed to your stateroom on the ship. Now, what people don't realize is you can go to guest relations and get those removed if you ultimately prefer to tip cash, or if you just want to, tip certain people like a different weighted amount. Like a big thing, like Royal, for example, I do the specialty dining package when I go, and that is, a higher price point. You tip on the specialty dining package. And then I'll also, when I get and sign my receipt, I'll often add extra money on for those servers that, you know, waited on us during those specialty dining meals, give them extra. So then when the tips are kind of weighted more for like going to the main dining room, since I didn't go there, sometimes I will remove my tips and cash, tip in cash for my room steward, and other people that help me, and kind of go about it that way too. So there's kind of, people think they're mandatory. It can be frowned down upon. I know some people out there, oh, they deserve everything, but really, when you see the breakdowns of the tips, and if I'm not going to the main dining room once and I'm still tipping, then I feel like you should have that freedom to kind of tip how you deem appropriate.
So one of the questions that you've already answered for us is like when to book, whether it's a cruise or a destination vacation. Is there, and I know you said there's always these like last minute deals that go on. What's the best way to try to take advantage of some of those deals that potentially are come up or out there?
So definitely like around holidays, you'll see like the best prices. So like again, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you'll see, Labor Day weekend, 4th of July. So suppliers tend to run their really great promotions around holidays. And then just in general, there's also, it's called wave season. So for travel agents, wave season is like typically like end of November into December, then early January, like the following year, like after the holidays, people really start ramping up on their trips. Like I'll see a lot of people get done with the holidays and they're like, all right, I need to get out of here. Let's get something on the books for March or April. And so it's just, there is always going to be a sale somewhere. It's just, I do find that the whole like getting the best deal is the gradual price increases that play. Even like Disney will increase their park tickets randomly, like two or three times a year, and like maybe hike up the resorts a small percentage. And so it'll just be like a jump. Like I was quoting somebody and they did a price increase in March. I quoted them, and then the next day when I went to hold their package, it had gone up like $250 due to the price increase, which they just kind of like gradually add those in throughout the year. So ultimately it's booking early, but there are always going to be sales. And then again, advisors like us, like I look all the time at, different ships. I can find deals, if you're expressing that you have a certain budget and expectations for the trip, that's where I kind of come into to find you at like what would be a great price for the experience you're expecting to get.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot, and we've already identified a few more future conversations, one on Europe. So I'm going to be interested.
Oh, and Alaska we need to add, because I was thinking more like when we were talking about the excursion costs, destinations like Europe, and then Alaska is like a big bucket list item. The excursion prices there are very high, and it's almost like, it's not like you're going to go to a private island and just, go there at no cost. You have to, for that full experience, you want to add on those like, whale watching tours and different, go up to some people take the helicopter to a glacier. And a lot of these destinations, even Europe too, you can find some high cost excursions that aren't even, in the cruise price, but it's, a great way to see these places, cutting out like train tickets and hotels in different cities and things. But you do have to budget for those excursions on those heavy types of places too.
Yeah, Alaska's an interesting one. Then we'll wrap up, because I know you've got to go. But it's for somebody that's, and you
I could talk all day. We could be here for 8 hours.
Well, if people remember from our first conversation, Jill is originally from Michigan. She now lives in Florida, and so it's always a strange idea of, at least for me, anyways, of living primarily in the north, of going someplace further north for a vacation. But
yes.
I've heard the pros and cons about Alaska, so that'll definitely be on our conversation list going forward. Yep. But Jill, just to remind our listeners, where's the best way for people to find out about you, what you do in your agency, if they're interested in working with you?
Sure. So it's just Wishes and Wonders Travel Agency. So you can go to our site. It's wisheswonderstravel.com. I'm also on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram. And then, our advisors are also out there on, they have different pages, but we're out there. You can find, it's easy to find us.
Well, I'll be sure to put links to your agency in the show notes and your social media handles. And looking forward to another conversation soon.
Oh yeah, and also, I forgot to mention, with finding deals, often travel agencies have access to special add-ons too for guests. So we can add on additional onboard credits for certain cruise lines, or like for Royal Caribbean, we'll get deals where we can add a specialty dining meal for two or a spa experience on when you book with us. So we often have access to back end things that you're not going to get on the consumer facing site. So that's another reason to book with us, is just to get those little extras beyond the expertise that we provide our guests too. Like, when you're asking me these questions, my guests have the access to me to ask about, what excursion should I do? What are these going to cost? I come and play just really helping them understand things so they're comfortable with this trip, and they're communicated with, so they know what they're expecting.
Yeah, and just full disclosure, listeners and viewers, Jill and I, well, it's not really Jill and I, but Teresa and Jill have been working together for the past year on our vacations. And, I can say firsthand what an awesome experience it's been. And the fact that you've saved us money on trips and been able to really help take the level of stress down in our marriage because of it. So
connecting
that
doors on the cruise, those are hard to find sometimes, and I got those as well. So we're rocking and rolling.
Jill, thank you again for your time, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Sounds great. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
So one of my goals with having Jill back on for this conversation was really diving into the types of vacations that you can take, whether it's a cruise, a resort, all-inclusive. And so a few interesting takeaways that I had from the conversation was that from a cost perspective, it's always better and usually less expensive to book early than later. Even when these deals come out, as Jill was talking about, and giving my own personal example of the vacation we're going on in February, is that we booked soon enough to where we got basically locked in the best cost. And even with these, Black Friday deals or holiday deals, we are still at the lower cost versus what these so-called sales are today. So I think from a planning perspective, if you have the flexibility or ability to plan vacations or trips in advance, Jill's point is do it as far in advance as possible, because usually that first price you lock in on is going to be the best price you're going to get. The other thing that I kind of took away from our conversation was this whole concept of choosing the right vacation, whether it's a cruise, again, resort, or a destination. And they all come with different amenities, all-inclusive, pay-as-you-go. But it's really trying to find the best option for you and your family. And I think that's where working with somebody like Jill that has all this experience of, utilizing various cruise lines, utilizing various resorts, utilizing various all-inclusive destination vacation spots can be really helpful. And as I mentioned in the closing, is that I personally feel like it's taken a lot of pressure and stress off of my marriage with Teresa in planning some of these vacations, because as our kids have gotten older, planning these vacations has actually gotten more difficult. Why? Because our kids are involved in different things. There's swim schedules and basketball schedules and soccer schedules. And let's just be honest, at least with my triplets who are soon to be 14, maybe they're 14 when this episode releases, they just don't want to do a lot of stuff as a family. And while on one hand, that's heartbreaking, on the other hand, we also get it. They're growing up, they're changing. So, but that still doesn't mean that we don't want to do things as a family. And I think figuring those things out and having conversations with somebody like Jill is really a great benefit. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.